The Secrets of Middle-earth is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Middle-earth, where we discuss the hidden themes and deeper layers found in the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, whether in his writings or in any of the media derived from them. I'm Jeff Haecker, and joining me today on the panel are Thomas Salerno. Hey, Thomas.
Hey there, Jeff.
Hey, Thomas. And Patrick Mason.
Howdy, Jeff.
All right. Be sure to follow The Secrets of Middle-earth in Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, or any podcast directory or app. And you can find us on social media at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or on Twitter, where we are at SQPN, or on Instagram, where we are at StarQuest Network. And don't forget, you can get your own official Secrets of Middle-earth merch, including our awesome t-shirt, at sqpn.com/merch. It's a great way for you to support the show and show your love for Tolkien and his wonderful world of Middle-earth. And as we've finally gotten the trailer for Rings of Power Season 2, we will be discussing that tonight and giving some final predictions and speculations about the upcoming season. But before we discuss it, I thought, just because we hit a pretty big milestone in Tolkien fandom, that I thought we should just acknowledge that The Fellowship of the Ring was published 70 years ago on July 29th of 1954. So we're a little bit past that now, but I just thought we should acknowledge that 70 years of Lord of the Rings. And The Hobbit was before that, but I think Lord of the Rings is really what kind of opened up this epic fantasy that we know and love. And Dr. Holly Ordway had published an article in Word on Fire that is well worth reading. So
yeah, it was good.
We can link it in our show notes, but just thought we should acknowledge that, since it's such a big part of why we're here in just fantasy, where fantasy has gone in the last 70 years now. So, but that being said, Rings of Power Season 2 is premiering on August 29th, and it's going to be 3 episodes. So I don't know if it's premiering in the 11 o'clock p.m. that day or how it's going to go. But we thought, since we finally got the trailer at Comic-Con, we should kind of talk about it and break it down, because it was actually a pretty lengthy trailer. It was like 3.5 minutes. So I'll just give a brief summary, and then we can go and talk about it. So it starts out with Galadriel talking about Sauron planning to conquer Middle-earth through deception and rings. Elrond says, "You're a collaborator and you are being deceived," but Galadriel says the ring is leading her. The Elf King, Gil-galad, I don't think he's been name dropped as Gil-galad, but he is Gil-galad, says she must answer, "Who is this man?" And then a sharer of gifts arrives at Eregion to begin working with Celebrimbor. Nori and the stranger are on an adventure in a desert land, and he is talking to Tom Bombadil. And then we also see Ar-Pharazôn looking into the Palantir with some pretty cool effects, if I must say. And interspersed with this, and it's kind of jumping back and forth, and we're not kind of going frame by frame here, but the stranger asks if it is his task to stop the fire. And then we also see dwarves mining and Durin asking his father to take off a ring. Then we see the Balrog and Durin rallying the dwarves. Bombadil then says every soul is in peril in Middle-earth, and we see what looks like the destruction of Eregion, and then shots of Numenor and Adar are interspersed with this, and then we also see an Ent. And then we also see, toward the end it ends with Elrond asking for an axe, presumably Durin, and I believe this is Isildur, looks to be fighting Shelob.
Yeah.
And then Anatar says, "Give me the 9." And it ends with Elrond leading elves in battle. So, like I said, a lot going on in this trailer. And I mean, after the brief teaser with just kind of images, and I'm glad we finally got something, that it really got me pumped for this season. I don't know about y'all.
And there's even more in the featurettes they've been releasing. So if people are really wary of spoilers, kind of stay away from the featurettes. I don't mind, but they've been showing a lot of cool stuff for the upcoming season. Yeah, I lost count how many times I kept watching the trailer over and over again. and just showing random people, look at this, just people who were around the house or friends of mine. I'm like, look, you've got to see this.
Yeah, it was really getting me pumped in. I mean, I've been waiting for it anyway, but like seeing the trailer, it really looks like they're going in kind of the direction that I think we all were kind of wanting them to go, and kind of maybe getting away from some of the stuff that didn't necessarily work in season one. But what about you, Pat? I know we never got your thoughts on season one on wax here, but what did you think of the trailer? And you're kind of in. What do you think season two? What do you think? How do you think it's looking so far?
I would say it moved me from optimistic to cautiously optimistic. Okay. From the teaser trailer to this trailer, and I'll give it to you like this because I have no qualms about a large studio being able to do a big set piece battle. Right. I think they'll be able to pull that off. I think it'll look amazing. You know, I think the elves fighting the orcs, the big battle in Eregion, the destruction of the city, that's all going to be awesome. You know, I think the dwarves are probably going to come in and save the day. You know, it's going to be awesome. I'm not worried about that. I'm not even that worried about the overarching plot line and the fact that they've reversed the order that they're doing the rings in.
Right.
Maybe not even reversed, just jumbled all the heck. Other than I guess the One Ring, which is going to come last, maybe. I don't know. What troubles me is always characterization. And I'll put it to you like this: Marvel's Civil War series in the comics was probably my favorite line of comics of all time. It's my favorite big crossover event they've ever done. And when they announced they were doing a Civil War movie in the MCU, I was like, okay, like that's a big plot line that you could do a bunch of movies about. How are you going to do this in one movie? And I really think they captured the characters, you know, from the comics and the overarching story, plot line, gist of what was happening in that huge comic crossover thing in that one movie. And I thought they did a good job of it. The question mark for me about Rings of Power is, can they do that? Like, they're trying to capture the second age in these 5 seasons, potentially. You know, we've got 3 for sure. And within a much greatly reduced time frame. And can they pull off it and do the characters justice? And, you know, what filled me with kind of seething rage throughout the entirety of the first season was Galadriel's characterization. And I've begun to rewatch season 1 in preparation, and I'm like 4 episodes in, and still every time she talks, I'm just like, I don't know if it's just the actress, and I don't think it is. I imagine she was getting coached, but like everything Galadriel says is just like on this edge, and it's like the most important thing right now, and it's got to be done. And I have the patience of a toddler. I mean, it just doesn't feel very It doesn't make it. Anyways, so that's what frightens me, is that we're going to continue to get impatient warrior princess Galadriel. And instead of, you know, elf maiden / you know, I guess princess / like politician / ruler / sorceress, you know, all of the things, well-rounded elf, and we're still going to be stuck with warrior princess toddler Galadriel. And I was more optimistic in the teaser than I am when she's talking now, because she still seems to be on that we got to go and do stuff now in the bits of it in the trailer that I saw. And so that worries me. On the other hand, I kind of really like where they've gone with the stranger interactions with Tom Bombadil, with Nori, with being out in you know, Rune or out east, wherever they are in the desert.
Yeah. Oh, we saw Easterlings, I think. They look awesome.
Yeah. I am super excited about that. So that's got me excited. And so, yeah, I just worry about the characterizations. And Sauron, I don't know about you guys, but like, I think it was like the third sentence he said to Galadriel, and I was like, oh, this is Sauron. Like, it's the first episode, and he's on the boat, and I was like, yep, that's Sauron. Done.
Well, we were in denial the whole time. If you listen back to our episodes, like, and I would remember bringing up, like, he would say things, and I remember in our recordings, I would be like, that was very Sauron. But there must be another explanation. And then we would come up with this other explanation for why he can't possibly be. And we kept talking about like our what was it, Jeff? Our like Sauron meter for Halbrand. Like how much is, what percentage is he possibly Sauron? And I remember like, yeah, even to like that last episode when my brother and I were watching the season finale of season 1 and those weird witches, I was just calling them the weird sisters, like announce like the Nazgals, announce that the stranger is Sauron. My brother and I were just like, oh, guess he's Sauron. We were like tricked by that, and until Halbrand comes out and says like it is a gift or whatever he says, and then we were like, oh, what the it's just like it's like every episode, he's just like the second or third thing he says to Galadriel's appearances can be deceiving. And I'm just like, nailed it. And then every episode he does something which is like, that is so very Sauron. When I watched the season again, I was like, okay, they were telegraphing this from the beginning. And I actually like Charlie Vickers a lot as Sauron.
Oh, he does an amazing job.
Yeah, in my mind now, he's basically like human form Sauron. That's how I imagine him now in my mind when I'm like reading the Silmarillion is Charlie Vickers. He does such a good job. I'm like, yeah, and I'm excited to see him in the new season, just because like we now get to see him as full on Anatar, and I love that. This is kind of jumping ahead in the trailer, but when he comes out of the furnace, I was immediately clicking, I'm like, Book of Daniel. Like, because not only do you have, where the three boys are put in the fiery furnace, but then that,
Michelle,
right. But then one, like a son of God, an angel, appears in the furnace with them. And I'm like, Sauron is an angelic being, and he's coming out of this fiery furnace. So like, because I've always like Sauron being a demon can only mock things that God does. I mean, he's taken the sign of, the all-seeing eye of providence and like turned it to his own, as a symbol for himself. And so like, as it went, I don't know if they were intentionally trying to, reference the Book of Daniel, but that's what my mind leapt to. He's like the angel in the furnace in the Book of Daniel. I thought that was very effective, because you can see like, Celebrimbor just like, because he knows what a Maiar is, and he's like just like in awe, and he's like, "What am I to call you?" It's just like, I was like, "Oh, okay." Here's where he uses his angelic power to basically overawe and dominate people.
Yeah. And I mean, now he looks like, I mean, it's clearly Charlie Vickers, but
although when they first released the new poster of him, like back before the teaser, I was like, oh, look, the new Sauron actor. They got somebody who looks oddly like Charlie Vickers. I thought that for like 10 minutes, and then I was like, oh, wait, that totally is him.
That actually,
Well, it's funny because, I mean, I was joking, I think, on the teaser that elves have human face blindness, and that's why he can't tell that it's he can't tell that it's the same person.
Yeah. Just
in an elf wig and with ears and a little bit of like facial differences.
Well, I think there's precedent for that in the canon. Like in Rivendell, Bilbo complains to like some of the elves, like, you can't tell a difference between a man and a hobbit, and they're like, all mortals are alike to us. And so like, so maybe they do have human face blindness.
But yeah, so in the trailer though, it like we were saying, it starts off with Galadriel talking about Sauron, being the using deception to deceive, not necessarily using like gathering this big army like we know him from Lord of the Rings. He's not trying to like dominate Middle Earth through using armies, but he's at this point, he doesn't really have those forces. He's
right.
Because for whatever, we don't really know. We still don't know if the whole thing where he meets Galadriel out on the water, if that was all staged. And I mean, I tend to think it is.
Oh, I think it was. Yeah.
But but we don't necessarily know like what he's been up to since. I mean, since they lost, the Great War. We don't know what he's been up to. He's been in hiding, and so
I think we're going to see some of it because there's like flashbacks. Did you see his crown?
Yeah, I had a note about that. Yeah, I had a note about that because it almost looks like Adar is like they're like he's trying to wear it or something.
Well, I there's a scene later where it looks like Adar is taking the crown and like impaling Sauron with it.
Yeah, okay.
With the spikes on the crown. Or somebody.
Yeah,
they've said we're going to see a non-Charlie Vickers Sauron potentially in this season.
There was all the speculation about that we would see a version of the Anya Lindale, which I don't know if that's still on the table.
I would highly doubt it.
But yeah, we see because there's the whole thing about he's going to use rings, and then we see the 3 rings, and I wanted to ask y'all, do y'all think these are the elven rings that Galadriel and eventually Gandalf and all will wear? Are they like a different ring? Because I know, like we were saying, I think their timeline was a little bit mixed up on that.
But only the great rings have stones on them besides the one ring, and there are only 19 of the great rings. So I would just assume they're the 3 elven rings because Galadriel, Gil-galad, and Círdan are all potentially going to get one, and they're the elven ring bearers. So I would just assume I wouldn't put it past them to invent new rings, but the Occam's razor in me is just like, no, those are probably the elven rings.
Yeah, and because we haven't gotten there in the Silmarillion yet, unfortunately, we didn't get there in time. But I think and it's been a while since I've read, but isn't it that they forged the ring, that it's Anatar that is working with Celebrimbor forging these rings, but he's not directly involved in the elven ring forging, and that's why they're kind of free from corruption. So
they get forged in secret.
Yeah. But we did see these being forged at the end of the last season. So I was assuming it was these 3 rings, and they're just kind of mixing up the timeline a little bit. But
it causes, because what it shows in the trailer is, Tree's dead now. Do we want to use these rings for what we made them for? Right? Because we made them to sort of repower our race, more or less, right? And I think that's the debate that's going on with Elrond and Galadriel and Gil. Is it Gil-galad?
Yeah, Gil-galad. Yeah.
I'm sorry, my names are all just jumbling.
That's Tolkien for you. Right. Names.
I would assume that those are the rings that eventually get passed down, because at some point the elves all figure out, okay, well, these are still tied in with the whole ring thing. We just got to make sure we don't use them when Sauron's around. But I think that's the debate that's going on, is whether to use the rings for what they made the rings for.
Yeah.
Or not. Which is actually a very interesting, because you have sort of in the first season, you have a setup of the various groups, right? The 3 races and the 3 nations, right? Numenor, who Halberd gets into, and then Lindon/Eregion, but the elves, which Halberd gets into, and then Khazad-dûm, which has got a Balrog that apparently comes up sometime this season, or we see something about him. And you have the setting of those, and then the tensions set up between them, right? The men don't talk to the elves anymore. The dwarves don't talk to the elves. The elves, I don't know what they did, but they're just hanging out, not talking to anybody, I guess, anymore. And then I think in this season, we see each of them takes a blow and starts to realize, okay, we have to, like, we can't do this alone. Like, we're now up against something that's much bigger than us.
Yeah, and I've speculated that the series will end with the last alliance. Like, that'll kind of be the, if not the very end, like the last episode, it'll be, part of the kind of the final arc of the series is seeing that last alliance and defeating Sauron at the gates of Mordor, which I'm assuming they'll be able to work the rights out for that. But, I hope they will, because I think that would be really cool to see that on screen. But yeah, we start to see that building of the alliance here with Elrond later in the trailer asking Durin, "I need your axe," which he's not. I don't think we see Durin at that point, but I'm assuming that's who he's talking to.
Yeah,
is we need your axe to kind of build that alliance. And there wasn't a lot of Numenor or kind of humans in this trailer, so I wonder if we're going to kind of maybe. I mean, there is some. So I mean, I'm curious if this season will kind of focus more on the elves and the stuff at Eregion versus kind of the bigger Numenor focus we saw last season. But then in the trailer we get Tom Bombadil. So I wanted to ask y'all, what did y'all think? How did y'all think of this kind of? We've seen pictures, but this is kind of the first dialogue of Tom Bombadil, or Tom Bomb and Melkor as he may be.
Really? We're still going with that? Tom Bomb and Melkor.
I have to troll a little bit there.
He was oddly, not grim's not the right word. He was oddly kind of subdued for Tom Bombadil. Although I have a theory about that, because they've said that like he is going to sing. I've heard the showrunner say he's going to sing, and we are going to see jolly old Tom. But I wonder if he's kind of like if he'll kind of put the other characters off balance by like switching on and off between jolly Tom and kind of serious Tom, because and I could just imagine that scene where he's looking very seriously at the stranger and he's like, all the souls of Middle Earth is in peril. Will you abandon them to their doom? And then like he pauses and then goes away going, "Hey ho, merry doll, ring a ding dill." Like I could see him doing that, and the stranger just looking after him at like, what just happened? Like I could see that. Like I was disappointed that we didn't really see much of jolly Tom in the trailer though.
Yeah, well, we have to remember that trailers are always cut together in such a way as to build that drama and and show things out of order. So we're probably seeing stuff that may happen in the finale and we just don't know it yet. So
yeah,
I know they usually kind of hold, or maybe not the finale, but at least the latter part of the season, because usually trailers hold back the last like stuff from the last couple episodes. But yeah, I thought he was interesting. Different from the characterization we know from Lord of the Rings. So we'll see how that plays out in this. But it was cool seeing the Easterlings and seeing Rune, or presumably what is Rune, and these Easterlings had these crazy kind of forged skull helmets and stuff like that.
That was cool.
And we actually saw Nori for like a brief second. So I'm curious how much we'll see her and if we'll see other Harfoots in this season. Because I think we, as a panel, we kind of agreed that was kind of the weaker storyline, or the Harfoots were kind of the weaker storyline last season. Although, I like where it ended with them, but
I remember like really early on, as stuff was coming out about this season, before we had seen any footage, they were saying like, oh, there's going to be other hobbits this season. Like we're going to see the Stoors or something like that in the East or something like that. I don't know if that's still a thing because nobody's mentioned it since that little tidbit came out. So
maybe we'll see them and it'll be like in the background on one scene.
Yeah.
Tom, they were there. Oh,
they're going east or west toward the Shire. Yeah. It will become the Shire.
I thought Bombadil sounded like Bombadil, but he didn't speak like Bombadil. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, yeah.
But that probably is the most curious part of the story, or what makes me the most curious about the trailer is like, what are they doing out there? I still think he's a blue wizard. The stranger is, and I think we're going to see some Eastern stuff, and like super excited about that. And the other super excited thing is the Entwife. I'm like,
yeah, I was wondering, like, is that, and okay, we have one, I assume that this is going to be the one named Entwife we have in the Legendarium, Fimbrethil, or Wandlim, which is Treebeard's wife. Like, I assume that they would just, like, easily just go for the named one that we know without having to invent their own name. So I'm wondering if that's who that is. You know, but it was really cool to see the Entwives finally in something, you know, but
right, yeah.
But now I'm like, oh no, but during the War of the Last Alliance, spoilers, they all kind of get burned to death or something by Sauron. Maybe it's kind of implied, but you know,
I hold out hope that they escaped.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see what the showrunners decide to do with them.
Yeah, right. I like what she says too. Forgiveness takes an age. I'm like, that's so Entish.
Yeah.
You know, and I was thinking like forgiveness because, you know, the Ents and the Entwives kind of grew apart, you know, so I'm sure there's some hard feelings there. So they would know all about that.
Yeah, and I'm curious if we would actually see other Ents in this, or if it'll just be this Entwife. Like, could we? In my my corkboard speculation is we'll see is John Rhys Davies will come back in the surprise cameo as Treebeard, but
that would be amazing.
Cool. It's probably due to the rights. I don't think he would because I don't think they have the rights to the actual Lord of the Rings. Those are now with that European company.
Oh yeah.
But it would be cool though if we, maybe an uncredited, we see a very Treebeard looking Ent that sounds like John Rhys Davies. Maybe we can pretend it's Treebeard, in our hearts. But Galadriel's going back to that. She's saying the ring is leading her. So I'm curious if that means like the ring is kind of, what is it leading her toward? Is it leading her kind of toward Sauron to, try to fight him and kill him, or what is it leading her to? I don't know if y'all had any thoughts on that.
I got the sense that there's got to be some kind of, and they've probably just made it up out of whole cloth, some kind of other quest that they're going to do in this where it's like, oh, there's something that will allow me to defeat Sauron because, now that she's kind of unintentionally unleashed Sauron back upon the world, I can see her going, like you said, Pat, into full on, I've got to do something mode, where now she's like, I've got to make up for what I did. So I don't know if she's searching for something to try and combat Sauron or what. Like, that's what I assume. There's going to be some other quest while, Anatar's in Eregion forging rings and stuff. We're going to cut back to Galadriel and Elrond on quest mode or something.
Yeah, because in the first season, it ends with like she doesn't come out and tell Celebrimbor and everybody that was Sauron. They just say that like that man is not allowed back in here or whatever. Or, he's not who I haven't rewatched the season yet. I'm planning to do that closer to this when it comes out. But I don't know if that was. I'm still curious as to why she didn't just say, or like, is she just not want to be like kicked out for bringing Sauron in, and once they know it was her who did it.
Well, Sauron kind of says that to her. He's like, if you ever admit this, you'd be admitting that Sauron lives because of you, and they'll cast you out. So I wonder if that's still kind of worming its way through her mind.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. And then she's kind of in that conversation with, what looks like it's like almost like a trial with Gil-galad of, who is this man, or what is it? So it looks like it may come out that that's who that was.
Oh, and they have the play on the I am no man.
Yeah.
He is no man. I was like, oh, come on. That's stupid. I'll put up with it, but I was just like, wow, that was forced. I did like what Elrond says, though, because he seems to clearly know what's going on. Like, she's told him, I think, because he says, by choosing to wear those rings, you have all become his collaborators.
I thought she told him at the end of season 1.
I think she did.
Yeah. And I like how where it says, when it says, I feel like it's leading me, the shot when she says it is them coming to a broken bridge and a chasm. And I'm like, well, that's a good place to lead you to.
Yeah. Dead end.
Yeah. So I kind of have the same feeling, like she's going to go on quest, but I have no idea for what. That's I don't know.
Well, I mean, it could be like, because Celebrimbor is, she doesn't know what happened to him at this point. Or I think that's what she says. And
maybe she's trying to find him.
Yeah. So it could be that. It could be they're trying to, she's finally decided, she needs to, or she gets some clue that, like, if she thinks he's dead, she gets a clue that he's alive or something. And, the ring is kind of leading her, she thinks it might be leading her that way. So, so it could be something like that, but we shall see. But then, just kind of to the next part here, like I said, we're not going frame by frame, but, there's the part about our Pharazôn looking into the Palantir, which I thought it visually looked really cool. So I'm curious to see kind of if that's kind of how he starts going even more corrupt, because he's already kind of politically corrupt, but he's not like, I don't think he's morally evil yet. So I'm curious to see if that's kind of what starts that, if he's looking at the Palantir and there's, maybe Sauron has one, if that's kind of starts drawing him in, because part of the story is Anatar gets taken to Numenor. So I don't know. I was curious if y'all think what y'all think about him looking at the Palantir, and we also see the eagle, the giant eagle, which we've talked about in our episode on the teaser, that the eagles live on Numenor and are kind of the servants of Manwë. And if they're ignoring them, then that's a sign of kind of what's to come for Numenor.
I noticed that the voiceover while he's looking in the Palantir talks about cheating death, which is very interesting foreshadowing, because that's what Sauron will eventually tempt our Pharazôn with, the ability to cheat death.
Oh yeah.
The other thing I'm still thinking, my theory is that our Pharazôn's first act of open rebellion against the Valar is going to be to slay the Great Eagle. I think he's going to do it. Because, like, in the teaser, we see him drawing his longsword when that eagle lands and turning towards it. And I'm like, ooh, does he, like, slay? Because, like, that would be, like, they're heralds of Manwë. They're also kind of they're on that mountain when they go up to give the 3 prayers to Ilúvatar. So it's almost like you'd be like killing something holy, essentially, So I can imagine, like, his first, really bringing Numenor into open defiance of the Valar would be kind of, well, if these are Manwë's eyes and ears, let's put his eyes and ears out, I mean, he gets so evil later in the Silmarillion that I can see him doing that,
Yeah, I think it's a jump, though, because it's like, if things don't twist that far until they've got Anatar on the island.
True, yeah.
And I just don't think he's going to be there yet. I think primarily he's going to be in Eregion for most of this, while Galadriel and Elrond, get to go offset questing somewhere, which allows him to really work with Celebrimbor and make the new rings that he wants made. On the other hand, they have quashed the timeline down to like a minuscule amount of what it was. So it's possible that's I don't know. Because, what we see with the Palantir when Galadriel touches it is the same sort of blue flash stuff. And what's different with Pharazôn is the fire he sees. And I'll be interested to see if, like, we actually get to see his vision from his perspective, because what we see from Galadriel and from the Queen Regent is the destruction of Numenor by water, right? Which spoiler alert. that's how it's going to go down. But I wonder if Pharazôn sees something different because Sauron has it, or for a different reason. I'm very curious. But fire is not part of the way it happens, more or less. So I am kind of hoping we get to see something of what he sees. Yeah, but I do wonder if it's the eye. If it's the first time we'll see the eye.
Yeah, I have Sauron.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of fire kind of imagery and discussion in this. Like the stranger is talking about being, am I the one to fight against the fire? Like is he kind of sent here from, wherever he came to fight this, kind of be the servant of the secret fire, one might say.
Yeah, I was gonna say if he is Gandalf, that's an interesting line, because he also ends up inheriting Narya, the Ring of Fire, from Círdan, which he uses to inflame the hearts of men and elves and dwarves to resist Sauron.
Which I like how we see the first time the ring really is like shown close up. It's underwater.
Yeah,
with the fish,
right? Mm-hmm.
Good old Círdan.
we didn't see a hand kind of grubbing in the mud like from Smeagol, but it was, speaking of Numenor, we didn't really see, like, there's one shot of Elendil kind of just walking, and then we see, I think that's supposed to be Isildur fighting Shelob that we see.
It is.
And we see kind of some overhead, like, big shots of Numenor that looked really, really awesome and like very reminiscent of Gondor. And obviously because of Gondor is descended from Numenor. So it's cool that they're drawing that connection. But yeah, I'm curious if they will kind of, if this is just kind of, trickeration and there will still be lots of Numenor stuff, because the season
I like
ended,
that word you just coined. Trickeration.
Well, I didn't coin. That's a sports.
Oh, is it? See, I know nothing about sports, so
look at that trickeration.
I just showed my ignorance there.
Yeah, Pat and I are from Texas, so we know I'm not super big into football, but I know my some of the terminology. But so we'll see if I'm curious to see if we'll see the Numenorians being, because at this point in the story, it looks like we said, it looks like a lot of it's going to be in Eregion and kind of focusing on that. So maybe this season is kind of the Numenors, like it's kind of this, the second, storyline B rather than storyline kind of A, like it was in the last one. But, eventually it's going to be rather important, as we potentially will see in the later seasons. But, like we actually see more of the dwarves than we do of Numenor. I feel like.
Because I think we're going to get a focus on the dwarven rings this season. And
Durin's father's wearing, he's already wearing one. So somehow between seasons 1 and 2, Durin gets, or King, I think his father is also Durin, but
which is one of my big nitpicks. There should never be more than one Durin at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, this is very easy, guys. Just read the appendices. It's in black and white. There can't be more than one. But anyway, like, it's weird, like the small things like that just get me. I'm just like, come on, guys. That was very easy to not do it that way. Anyway, but yeah, I've actually seen in one of the featurettes, there is going to be a scene of Sauron distributing the rings of power to the dwarves. So we are going to see that this season. And I like that. Oh, and also we are getting Narvi, who is a famous dwarf from the Second Age. And in this, I'm pretty sure he's Durin's brother, the Prince Durin. So he's the younger Durin's brother. So they've sort of invented that he was just a prominent dwarf in the Legendarium. But so I remember seeing pictures of like his outfit from like Comic-Con and stuff. So I think we're going to get a lot of dwarves this season, which is great because I loved the dwarf stuff anyway last season.
Yeah, and like we said before, like the Durin, Disa, Elrond kind of friendship was one of my favorite parts, or the Durin Elrond friendship, but then Disa was great too. So I hope we get to see kind of more of that more of that friendship and interaction. And it seems like we will if Elrond's, trying to get an army to take back Eregion from
well, yeah, I mean, like I think they mention it in the Silmarillion, but in like the sack of Eregion, there's a dwarven army that comes at like the last minute to help break the siege. So
nice.
I think that's where they're going with this. Oh, and did you see where like, okay, so we see the Balrog at one point swooping through Moria and doing something, but did you notice that other thing where Anatar kind of conjures a little image of the Balrog from like a bowl of like fire? That was like, whoa! I'm like, that's cool. What's that all about?
That's partly why I think he may have a Palantir, because I think maybe he's looking at it in that, so he knows what's going on there.
Because you don't technically need it. It doesn't need to be Palantir to Palantir. You can just use the Palantir to view stuff. Yep. Right. So yeah.
It actually, like, it has this ultra specific range and what it can and can't see through in the Legendarium. It's super detailed. Like if you look up, like, oh yeah, I can see like 3 fathoms up and down, and it can see through rock and stone, but not lead. And I'm like, huh.
It's like Superman. It can't see through lead. Yeah.
Well, is it surprising that Tolkien made a very specific
I know. Like, I was like,
how they work.
So strange.
Yeah, it seems like the ring is affecting, because we saw the dwarves, they were starting to mine the mithril, and initially King Durin didn't want to, and he thought it was a bad idea. And then Prince Durin, at Elrond's kind of convincing, started to do it anyway, and it led to a collapse of a part of their mine, which also led to kind of the Balrog waking up. So, but it seems like King Durin is now wearing a ring and will be kind of under Sauron's influence to get mithril and so I'm curious to see if Anatar is needing mithril for his own purposes, or if he's just trying to sow some chaos and discord and trying to cause the dwarves to kind of cave in, for lack of a better term, cave in on themselves and not be a threat to him anymore. And maybe that's part of why he's staring at the Balrog or is using the Balrog to kind of, because he's trying to divide these people so that he can try to take over, but he doesn't have the big army or anything yet. So he's using the tricks he has, which are deception, like Galadriel was talking about in this trailer.
Yeah. I think it's probably a 2 birds, 1 stone kind of a deal. I think he both wants them to wake the Balrog up on his timescale, right? Don't do it too early, don't do it too late. But the other hand, they do use the mithril is important in forging the 3 elven rings. They have that whole scene where Halberd and Celebrimbor are talking about how to forge it and how to work with it, and how it doesn't really seem to do with pressure the way steel does. And so my assumption is Sauron will want that for the other rings to forge them. That would be my guess. So it's kind of I can get them to mine this for me, and then on top of that, I can get them to wake up the Balrog so that I can let Adar destroy the elves in peace and not really have to do much.
By the way, it's very clear to me that he's using he's using Adar to destroy Eregion for him, and Adar doesn't even realize he's being used. Yeah, which is just perfect.
So yeah, it seems like Adar is he's wanting to kind of be his own leader, and not he has his orc children, I guess you might say, and he wants them to have a home, which is part of the whole blowing up of the Southlands to make Mordor so that they could have a home. But then I guess viewing the elves and Eregion as a threat to them, so because they're kind of the big bastion or big fortress of the elves right now is Eregion. So we didn't really see any shots of Mordor.
Leave so Sauron to me, I wonder who he's talking to.
Yeah. And I like going all the way back to the first conversation he ever has. He says he's asked, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm not a god." yet. And he makes that sort of pronouncement of what he's kind of trying to go for here. And so he's interesting enough, he, obviously wants to supplant Sauron in a power kind of way, but there seems to be this other aspect to it. And I wonder if that's going to have part of the reason he invades Eregion, more or less. Because at this point, like, isn't he in Mordor? Isn't he like, okay, I got my place now?
Yeah. What's going to get him to leave and march on Eregion? That's one of my biggest questions for this season.
I feel like Numenor is going to have a big part of that. I feel like what we see, what's it? Oh, I can't remember his name. So we see Isildur, right, fighting off giant spider. I don't think that's Shelob.
No, I think it's one of the Brood. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought I'd read or seen somewhere that it was officially named Shelob, but
she's going to be in it.
Okay,
like,
maybe
I've seen her in one of the featurettes. But there's also, it's going to be like that episode of The Mandalorian where there's the giant ice spider and there's like the army of little ones. They're basically doing that in this season, where there's going to be an army of Shelob's Brood and then.
Okay. Maybe, I guess I was just mixing that up, but
I think he probably goes from, sails up the river to where Osgiliath will eventually be, and then goes off to where Ithil will eventually be / Morgul, and goes through that same pass to try and spy out what is going on in Mordor, right? Because at this point, they've had to kind of completely evacuate, quote unquote, the Southlands after the, volcano.
Yeah, or Isildur trying to escape because he was still lost in the Southlands when the season ended.
That's true.
He was kind of separated from the rest of Numenor, and because the rest of the Numenorians, they all kind of escape and pull back out of the Ashland now, and they're kind of where they first landed when they landed in Middle Earth. But Isildur was still lost kind of so it looks like, at least to me, it looked like he was kind of trying to fight his way out, and like he didn't have much. He had his sword, and that's probably all he has.
But I think there's going to be, what we see with his father, walking, that's sort of an embarkment kind of a ritual, and he is leading a task force into the east, I guess, to kind of reestablish the bulkhead, or not the bulkhead, the beachhead there. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I think so.
And the other weird thing is we have the Queen Regent, the one scene she's in, she's got eyes again.
Well, she had eyes, but she was blind. Yeah. Like her eyes weren't destroyed.
I thought they were kind of like,
they were like messed up, but like
I thought they were just, because you see her, because they're like, people are looking her in the face and they're not like immediately noticing something's wrong.
Yeah, she had some burns around her eyes.
Yeah,
I think her eyeballs were intact.
Yeah, I think her eyes were like were physically fine, but obviously they don't work anymore. So, yeah, I'm curious. I had that as a note of you see her, so she's not kind of being just written off. She's still there, and I've kind of speculated that maybe as a blind character, she may have kind of like a seer quality, or like a seer kind of a role now. Because in a lot of fantasy literature and like classic literature, if you're blind, you're often kind of that mystical role. And Mike was talking about how, if you in a lot of medieval culture, if you lose your sight as a ruler, you're not eligible to be a ruler anymore.
That's right.
So and maybe that's how our Pharazôn kind of gets in, because he can be like, oh, I can marry you and you can stay queen, and
I'm not even sure they're going to do the marry part. I think they're kind of squeamish about that. I think they're just going to have him supplant her because she's blind.
Yeah, very possible. We don't need a king. We have an autonomous collective.
Wait, is that a thing?
Monty Python.
Oh, okay.
Come see the violence inherent in the system.
Because I seriously think
distributing swords is not a system of government.
Why not? But yeah, they throw her. They seem to be throwing her to that sea monster that we saw in the first season. the sea worm or something to that effect.
I thought she was just like swimming and hanging out and was just kind of there. But yeah, that could be interesting if they like, you know, they need to sacrifice her or something, or that's what they or you know, our Farazan says we need to get rid of her, and he hires some of his goons to try to take her out.
Hired goons.
Hired goons, yeah. I know that reference.
I know that reference.
Yeah.
But yeah, then we get to kind of the end of the trailer, and Anatar says, you know, he's like fighting people, and he says, "Bring me the 9 or give me the 9." So I was curious if you think we're actually going to see kind of the turning of some men into becoming what will become the Nazgul by the time of Lord of the Rings.
I assume they're going to save a lot of that for next season, and I think that they're going to, in the kind of fuzzy canon of this universe, I think pretty much all the Nazgul are going to be Numenorians, because I think they're going to simplify it where Sauron just takes the 9 to Numenor when he's captured and brought there and distributes them to Numenorians. I know in canon, not all the Nazgul were Numenorians. Some were, and the Witch King definitely was. But yeah, I think he's going to, because like they're really the only civilization of men besides whatever's going on in Rune that we've seen so far.
Yeah, I kind of feel like what we'll get some of that with the Stranger is sort of the struggle in the East between who gets the rings, and I think he's probably going to be chasing Sauron out there, is what I'm guessing, because he's out there. That's what he figures out. Okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. Is I'm supposed to hamper or stop Sauron as best as I can out here, because he's gathering these kingdoms or these men or these people. At least that's what he does in the books. And that's what the Blue Wizards do. So I'm just sort of thinking that's what that storyline is. I'm hoping. Otherwise, it gets confusing as to why they're out there in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of my speculations was that maybe they were looking for Cuvain, like the place where the elves woke up. It was like a source of power or something. Like he was drawn that way. But yeah, I think the Blue Wizard or him going east to try to hamper you know, trying to shore up the, you know, the good men probably makes more sense. So, which, I mean, I do think it's Gandalf, just because I was wrong the last time. So I'm going with the Halbrand is Sauron. So I'm going with the safe choice of saying,
yeah, that's kind of my same logic. But I'm going with the safe choice.
Because they are kind of very obviously kind of.
He's a Blue Wizard. It's not Gandalf. And
that new Istari who's going to be in it, the way he looks, I'm like, you kind of look like a younger Saruman. But yeah. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the set photos of him. The new Istari.
Yeah.
He's got the kind of same aquiline nose that Saruman has and the straight hair. And so I'm like, are you younger Saruman, or are you just another Blue Wizard? So I don't know. Yeah, they may be just trying to throw us off, but it's like, you know, throw us off the scent. But I don't know. Oh, one little bit, though. We were talking about Adar before. Do you notice he has a troll in his army this time?
Yeah, I think I did see that. Yeah.
Yeah. In one of the featurettes, they show the troll stomping around, and the troll literally picks up a guy and like swats him away with his club like he's playing like badminton or something. I was like, wow, okay, and they there's this bit where like they're gonna send him in to like, you know, attack the elves, and one of the orcs turns to Adar in the featurette, and he's like, "But Lord Father, he will kill our own kind." And Adar's like, "Just send him in." And so, so I like that. Like for them, like the trolls are just like monstrous brutes. They just smash whatever's in their way. Doesn't matter who's. They don't care that the orcs are on their side. I mean, especially at this, because you don't get Olog High, the smarter trolls, until the Third Age. So these guys are just going to be like big dumb.
Yeah,
dumb rocks.
And interspersed with all this too, we see shots of Arondir, who I'm curious if he'll have a reduced role this season because of Bronwyn no longer being in the show. But we do see kind of some action shots of Arondir, and then we also see Barrow Wights. We see Elrond and a group. I think it has Galadriel in it too, but they're kind of facing. They're kind of in like a misty forest or something, and we see these Barrow Wights come up. So which the images first came up in like an Empire magazine. They weren't even in the trailer, but they look kind of interesting. So I'm curious to see how I may be
the only person not upset by that. Like there's so many people upset that there are Barrow Wights in the Second Age, and I'm like, guys, first of all, they say in the books that the Barrows have existed since the First Age, and Sauron had to. I know that the Witch King creates Barrow Wights in the Third Age, but the Witch King learned his necromancy from Sauron, so Sauron could just create some in the Second Age. So,
yeah. And I mean, of all the things to be annoyed with in Rings of Power, but
I've seen people get really upset by that, and I'm like,
it's pretty low on my list,
right? Yeah.
Overwhelming flames across my face every time Galadriel speaks.
There is a tempest in me, and Pat's there like, there's a tempest in me too because I hate this dialogue.
Throwing those foam bricks at the TV. Come on.
And then the trailer
do that line again faster with more intensity. No, just. What
does Sauron say to her? He's like, you're like a cult at full gallop or something like that.
Yeah.
And he's kind of right.
and I know we guys have covered it, but I think the play he makes at the very end, trying to tempt her to, be his queen or whatever, I think that is like an ultra sincere thing he is doing. Yeah. Because the Galadriel we get presented with matches him. Like she, the actual Galadriel, not so much, but like the one we get presented with in the show, like he's been working with her all along, and
it was Galadriel all along. Oh wait,
I do like how because I went and rewatched that scene again where his final like sales pitch to her, and when he's saying, I'll make you a queen, and the things he starts saying, he's like, you'll be fairer than the sun and the storm and the lightning, stronger than the foundations of the earth. I liked that because that's what Galadriel says about herself later in the Lord of the Rings when she's tempted by the One Ring. So I thought that was neat. But
yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't mind it as much because I know it's a TV show, so you want to have character development, and it can be hard to develop an immortal being that doesn't change much over the course of that doesn't change much once they're an adult to the, thousands of years later when they're leaving Middle Earth. So I'm okay with her being kind of more impulsive and not quite the Galadriel we know. Because we can see her now if she stays that way the whole series. That would kind of start to become bothersome. But hopefully, and I mean, it seems like they're kind of going to develop her into more of the Galadriel that we know by the end. So
I liked that spinny double fire arrow thing she did in the trailer. That was cool. Elven archery. I'm always down for that.
What's his name? Like he stabs a guy with the arrow.
Yeah, Arondir.
Through his cheek.
Oh yeah, did you see that? It was like, whoa. Like, okay. Yeah, it looks like they're fighting, I don't know, just like random brigands they ran.
Yeah, it looks like just men. Yeah.
Yeah. But I like how Arondir, when he sees the Ent wife, he's like gobsmacked. You see him, he's just like, oh, like, and he's a Sylvan elf, so he's, they revere the Ents. So to actually meet one, he's probably like, I never thought this would happen in my entire life.
But yeah, then the last kind of shots of the trailer are Elrond kind of leading a great charge, presumably to try to break the lines at Eregion and to try to save save Eregion from being completely demolished. And it seems like everything's going to end there, kind of like the South. It's going to kind of be like the focal point, kind of like how the Southlands were. It was like where everything kind of culminates. So, but it looked really cool. And like you're saying, Pat, it looks like it's going to be a really big, awesome action set piece. So hopefully they can, get that right at least. If they don't do anything else, hopefully they get
right.
That right.
I have full faith that they're going to pull that off. It'll probably be about 2.5 episodes.
That's what they said.
Yeah,
that it's going to be like 2.5 episodes long. So
well, and it'll be nice to see Elrond being kind of a warrior, because because that's who he is by Lord of the Rings. But in the first season of Rings of Power, he was not. He was more kind of the, kind of being a statesman and kind of a scribe of Gil-galad's.
His speechwriter. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
So not really action, but we see, as we'll come to know him. And if you want to see more action, Elrond, you can watch the Hobbit movie. So you can check your bingo card. There's our contractual obligated reference.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. We did say
almost forgot. But overall, that was kind of the last note that I had. We kind of touched on the Crown of Sauron, which I had a note about in seeing Queen Muriel. But yeah, I'm excited. We're just not even 4 weeks away from it. So this trailer did get me pumped. I think you said kind of the same thing, Thomas. Like after seeing it, you were kind of excited about where this season coming back. So.
Yeah, it was just like, I was like, I'm just excited to see more Lord of the Rings in live action again, and I'm very I still believe in like the premise of the show. In other words, of having a live action show about the creation of the rings and the Second Age and Sauron's rise to power and then fall in the Last Alliance. I still think that's a solid premise, and I'm excited to see some of the things we're going to see in live action. It just got me excited. And I know there's going to be things I won't like about it, but at the same time, it's just like, I'm also pretty okay with just compartmentalizing it, where it's like, I know this is not Tolkien's work, and this is essentially the most expensive Lord of the Rings fan fiction ever made. And I'm pretty much content with that. It's like, I'm like, okay. And maybe it just comes from, reading comic books so much in my teens and 20s, where I was like, oh yeah, this is like a separate universe. I can compartmentalize it. This isn't the canon universe. It's,
yeah, I like to call it kind of the Jackson verse, because it's very reminiscent of Lord of the Rings. Yeah. It's called Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, so it's kind of already drawing that connection there. And
the Balrog looks basically identical to the one in the Peter Jackson movies.
But and like a lot of the set designs and the visual stuff, like Numenor looks like what Gondor looks like, just bigger and grander.
Yeah, with a little Greek flair. In it. Little Minoan civilization thrown in there.
Yeah. But anything else on the trailer? And then before we go, we did have a little bit of feedback I wanted to include since it was relevant to this. But did y'all have any other thoughts on the trailer? Any kind of final wild predictions you want to put on the record, so that if it happens, you can say you were right?
Elrond's gonna die. They did what?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That would really, that would be, yes.
One other thing. I'm really wondering if we finally see Anarion this season.
Yeah.
Because he's brought up several times, Elendil's other son.
Yep.
He's brought up, and him and Elendil are apparently not on very good terms, and I was just interested in Elendil's whole family and his family dynamic last season. And I remember hearing a rumor that we might see Anarion, because, and he'll die at the Battle of the Last Alliance. So they've got to start setting him up at some point as a character. We have to meet this person to care about him later. So
yeah, and we see him, his sister too, or Isildur's sister too, was in the first season. So
right, Arian, yeah.
So curious if we'll see her. But anything else from you, Pat?
Cautiously optimistic. As far as I'm willing to go. It's a good chance for it to be better. I mean, to be honest, what I love about what they've done with it has been, you know, the set design, the costuming, the music, the
Bear McCreary's music.
Yes,
is amazing.
That's all been fantastic. And you know, hilariously, the stuff they sort of made up whole cloth. Adar, the creation of Mordor, all of that has actually been really good. So if I could just get a Galadriel that's just somewhat more like she is in the books, I'll be overjoyed. But yeah, cautiously optimistic.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we did have a little bit of feedback related to the Rings of Power, so I thought I would include it here. So Paulioni, I believe this was from Discord, says, I suspect that if the stranger is Gandalf, they'll do what Lord of the Rings Online did with their take on his Second Age appearances. The Valar veil his memories of it all when it's over. In Lord of the Rings Online's case, it was an act of pity after he got killed by Sauron towards the end of the War of the Last Alliance. So, yeah, it could be. I mean, they could do something like that if they really wanted to. I don't know, but we'll.
Can you imagine though? They're just like, oh yeah, you're Gandalf. We'll wipe all your memories.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past them, but that would annoy me actually.
And then we had Liz Wright, 6558 on YouTube, said, I'm so glad you guys are covering season 2. Love the fun and level-headed discussions with season 1. Also, I thought it was great when Caitlin of Tea with Tolkien had you guys pick your Valar names. Thanks for that, Liz. Yeah, I'm excited to be back, and yeah, I was excited for the first season, and I didn't have fun with it overall, and so yeah, I'm excited to be back. And then the last bit of feedback was our very own Angela Cialana on Discord says, such an impressive trailer. Like, wow, I'm so ready for the season. So yeah, I think I'm in that same boat. Pat's a little bit more mixed, but
cautiously optimistic.
We just need to get that clip so that if you tap out on Rings of Power, we can just play that over and over again.
Pat's saying cautiously.
Pat's left the room in anger. We're just gonna phone in his voice with cautiously optimistic now and again.
Well, if that's all that you guys have on this, like I said, we're a couple weeks out. It'll be 3 episodes, and I believe we're covering them all at once, so it'll probably be a little bit of a longer first episode for us.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
But for now, that is it for this episode of The Secrets of Middle-earth. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make this show possible, including Charlene B., Leslie G., Joe N., Amy G., and Eric M. Their generous donations help us to continue to create The Secrets of Middle-earth and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them at sqpn.com/give. Now, we'd love to hear from you, our listeners. What do you think about the Rings of Power Season 2 trailer? You can let us know on our Facebook page or on Twitter, or by sending an email to middleearth@sqpn.com, leaving us a comment on YouTube, or by visiting our channel at the StarQuest Discord community at sqpn.com/discord. And that's going to probably be the best place for discussion of the season with us. We also have a spoiler zone and a spoiler-free section. So you can discuss Middle-earth in previous episodes until you've seen the newest episodes. So highly recommend checking us out on Discord. And there's a channel for all the shows at StarQuest. So great way to discuss all your favorite pop culture things. So join us next time for our discussion of the premiere of Rings of Power Season 2. And until then, thank you, Thomas, for joining me and sharing the secrets of Middle-earth.
Well, thank you, Jeff.
And thank you, Patrick.
Well, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Till then, I'm Jeff Haecker. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Middle-earth on StarQuest.
Here's another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy. Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. Find the show wherever fine podcasts are found or at sqpn.com/mysterious.